Mrs. Linda sat quietly in front of the small house, where the scent of lavender still lingered in the air. Just a week ago, her only grandson had stood there, holding her hand tightly and said, "Grandma, can you leave everything to me? I'll take care of you for the rest of your life." But today, when she decided to look at the will, she realized something horrifying. The truth was not what he had said. Mrs. Linda, 72 years old, lived alone in a small wooden house tucked away in a quiet neighborhood. Since her husband passed away 5 years ago, her life had followed a steady routine. Each morning she would wake up, brew a cup of hot tea, and sit in her rocking chair in the living room, watching the first rays of sunlight stream through the window. The paintings of her children and grandchildren on the walls always brought her warmth, but deep down, she knew she was always lonely. But what had changed since her grandson Timmy came into her life? At first, she was happy to have someone visit, and Timmy, with his innocent eyes and sweet promises, seemed like a ray of light in her dark years. She thought she had found someone close again, but Timmy only came when he needed something from her, and then disappeared when there was nothing left to take. Mrs. Linda sat alone at the dining table, the aroma of the carrot soup she had just cooked filling the quiet warmth of the house. Evening had fallen, and the soft yellow light from the table lamp bathed the room in a cozy glow. But even though everything felt just as warm as usual, tonight something was different. Suddenly, the doorbell rang, cutting through the silence. Mrs. Linda looked up, slightly surprised. Her grandson Timmy rarely visited except on special occasions, or when he needed something. She opened the door, and there he was. But his eyes were no longer bright as they once were. They held something heavier, harder to read. Timmy, rubbing his hands together anxiously, stepped closer to the table. "Grandma, I need your help with something," he said. His voice lacked the gentle tone she was used to. It was filled with hesitation, as if he were struggling to find the right words to say something difficult. Mrs. Linda set down her bowl of soup, her hands trembling slightly, unable to understand why Timmy had come without a smile or a greeting like he always did. She looked into his eyes that once held the innocence and joy of a child, but now they only reflected worry and fatigue. Something wasn't right, but she didn't know what to do. "There's something I need to ask you," Timmy continued, his eyes fixed on hers. "I'm in financial trouble. My job isn't going well, and I can't pay off my debts anymore. Can you give me a large sum of money from your estate?" The words hit her like a painful slap. Her heart seemed to skip a beat. From the hesitation in Timmy's voice, she instantly realized this wasn't about love or care. It wasn't about concern for her. All he wanted was money, a sum she had spent her entire life saving. Mrs. Linda didn't respond right away. Her hands gripped the napkin on the table, her fingers trembling with disbelief. Her eyes blurred, as if all the pictures of family and love she had built over the years were suddenly fading away. Everything felt empty, like a room too large with no one left inside. Timmy stood in front of her, his expression unchanged. He waited, but she couldn't just smile and embrace him like she used to. A heavy silence fell over the room, making the atmosphere even more oppressive. Finally, Mrs. Linda broke the silence. "Do you know what you're saying, Timmy?" Her voice was soft, but full of resolve. She looked straight into her grandson's eyes, searching for even a flicker of that hopeful light she had once believed in. "You came here not for me, but for my money, didn't you?" Timmy turned his face away, unable to meet her gaze. He bowed his head and sighed. "Don't think too much, Grandma. I'm just trying to help myself." A storm surged within Mrs. Linda. All those years she had poured her heart into raising and caring for him, all the blessings and love she had given him, now answered with a selfish request like this. She couldn't accept it. A deep sorrow rose in her heart, but with it came a quiet strength. "Maybe I held on to the wrong hope about your love," she said, her voice firm but calm. "You think I can save you with money, but I can't give away something that isn't rooted in true love." Timmy said nothing more, just stood there, unsure of what to do next. Mrs. Linda no longer felt the need to speak. All those lonely years had taught her something. Sometimes forgiveness isn't about saying yes to every request. It's about loving yourself enough not to let yourself be taken advantage of anymore. Timmy's words, though not loud, weighed heavily, like stones pressing down on her chest. No matter how much she loved him, no matter how much she longed for a family, this she could not allow. Since that day, Mrs. Linda couldn't escape the memory of Timmy's request. Every time she recalled his eyes, it felt like a sharp pain stabbing her heart. His gaze was no longer the same. Timmy had once been a lively, affectionate boy who showed love through gentle gestures, mischievous smiles, and stories about school and his little dreams. But now everything had changed. In the days that followed, Mrs. Linda couldn't help but wonder if she had grown too old to recognize that things were no longer the way they used to be. Timmy's sincerity, if it had ever existed, now seemed like a fragile mask, easily torn away when things no longer benefited him. She felt as if she were trapped in a game, one where she was being used, and no one else seemed to notice but her. Timmy's question still echoed in her mind. "Can you give me a large sum of money from your estate?" Such a simple sentence, yet it carried all the deceit and exploitation she had never imagined she'd have to face. How could the grandson she had once loved and cared for be so cold and selfish? Each time she thought about it, her heart felt like an open wound, each beat pulsing with a quiet pain. Though the disappointment was undeniable, Mrs. Linda still couldn't bring herself to do anything to change the situation. She loved Timmy, and no matter how wrong he was, no matter how much he hurt her, she couldn't let go of that love. But love couldn't buy everything, and certainly not sincerity. Even though she couldn't admit it out loud, a part of her knew the disappointment was growing, slowly overtaking the affection that remained. A week later, she decided to speak with Timmy. The unease wouldn't let her rest, but she also knew she couldn't continue living in this haze of doubt and pain. She needed to tell him how she felt and why she couldn't grant his request. This conversation wouldn't be easy. Mrs. Linda knew that, but she also knew that to protect herself, she had to do it. That day, she waited for Timmy in the living room, clutching a cushion to her chest, eyes fixed on the wall clock. Time passed slowly, and in her mind, the words she planned to say to her grandson circled endlessly. She wanted to be gentle, but she also couldn't deny the truth. Everything had changed. When Timmy walked in, Mrs. Linda immediately noticed the difference in him. His eyes no longer held warmth or innocence. Instead, they were filled with anxiety and something slightly threatening. He walked in without a greeting, just stood there, his hands awkwardly stuffed in his pockets. "Timmy, we need to talk," Mrs. Linda began, her voice trembling with tension. "About my will." Timmy looked at her strangely, unsure of what she was going to say. He said nothing, just waited. The silence only made the room feel heavier. He didn't seem worried. In fact, there was a certain smugness in his demeanor, as if he was sure she'd eventually give in. Mrs. Linda took a deep breath and continued, "You asked me for a large sum of money from my estate, but I can't grant that request." Timmy's eyes widened in disbelief. He couldn't believe what he had just heard. "You can't do that," he snapped, clenching his fists, his face flushed with anger. "You're the only one who can help me. If you don't give me anything, you'll die alone. You can't do this, Grandma." His words hit her like a slap. Mrs. Linda felt her body tremble, her hands cold, but she stood firm. The pain inside her deepened, but her resolve remained. "I won't leave you a single penny," she said, her voice firm even as her heart shattered. "Love can't be traded for wealth. I've lived long enough to know that affection isn't something you can buy." She looked into Timmy's eyes, searching for a sign, anything, that might show he still cared. But there was nothing. His gaze was full of fury, desperation. He no longer saw her as his grandmother, but as an obstacle in the way of what he wanted. His reaction not only broke her heart, but made her realize something deeper. For the first time, Mrs. Linda saw that her grandson's love was no longer real. It had vanished, long ago, though she couldn't recall when. What he called love had merely been a means to an end. And when she didn't give him what he wanted, it disappeared instantly, leaving only anger and resentment behind. Mrs. Linda couldn't hold it in anymore. Her heart weighed heavy in her chest, and though she didn't want to, she had to face the truth. The love she had once poured into Timmy had become nothing more than a nightmare. A nightmare she now had to face alone in silence. After the confrontation with Timmy, Mrs. Linda felt as though she had just won a major battle. Although Timmy's words still echoed in her mind, she knew she had overcome the first challenge. A challenge not only about inheritance, but also about love and trust. What she once believed to be her grandson's filial devotion had now revealed itself to be a calculated game of manipulation. His gestures and glances no longer held love, but strategy, tactics designed to seize her wealth. That truth hurt more than anything she had ever felt, but it also awakened a hidden strength within her that she didn't know she possessed. But this victory was only the beginning, Mrs. Linda realized. Now was the time to make a crucial decision. Her love for Timmy could no longer justify blind sacrifice. The question she kept asking herself was, could she continue living under such deception? The answer was no. She decided not to leave her estate to Timmy, and instead, she began planning to revise her will. Though she knew this decision would anger Timmy and might sever their relationship completely, she had no other choice. The feeling of being used was too overwhelming, and she knew she had to protect herself. The next day, Mrs. Linda got in her car and drove to the law office of someone she had known for many years. He was an old friend, someone who had helped her with many matters, big and small, throughout her life. As she stepped into the office, she felt a sense of security, like she had entered a space where her decisions would be respected, free from anyone's control. "Good morning. I need your help," Mrs. Linda said, her voice firmer than ever before. By now, she was no longer the delicate, gentle woman of the past. The years had made her stronger, more decisive, especially when it came to facing the schemes of the very grandson she had once loved with all her heart. The lawyer, with a serious expression, looked at her carefully. "You want to change your will?" he asked, as if to make absolutely sure she wasn't hesitating. "Yes," Mrs. Linda replied without a pause. "I want everything I have to go to those who truly care about me, not because I have something to give, but because they genuinely love me." She looked into the lawyer's eyes, feeling the weight of her own certainty. "I want all of my assets to be divided among my sincere friends, the ones I know will stand by me through anything, not those who only seek to benefit from me." The lawyer nodded, pressing his lips together. It was clear he understood the difficult position she was in. "Are you sure about this? Changing a will can have significant consequences," he said, but Mrs. Linda was no longer afraid. "I'm sure," she said firmly. "I can't let Timmy take advantage of my love anymore. I'm tired of living in fear and doubt." In the weeks that followed, Mrs. Linda didn't hear from Timmy like she used to. He didn't check on her, didn't share anything about his life, just silence, leaving her alone with her thoughts. But then one day, as she sat by the window watching the afternoon light pour in, her phone rang. On the other end was Timmy's voice. But this time, there was no warmth, no caring tone. Instead, it was sharp and tense, filled with resentment. "What did you do?" Timmy demanded, his voice taut with anger. "Why did you refuse to help me? I don't understand you anymore." Mrs. Linda sat down in the chair by the window, staring outside. The world looked the same, but felt more distant than ever. Leaves fluttered in the wind, but the comfort they once brought her had vanished. Everything in the room felt blurry, except Timmy's voice still echoing in her mind. She didn't rush to reply. Timmy's words no longer shook her. After a long pause, she answered gently, her voice calm and resolute. "Timmy, one day you'll understand." With nothing more to say, she ended the call. At that moment, Mrs. Linda felt a sense of release, like a burden she had carried for too long had finally been lifted. She knew this decision wouldn't be easy for Timmy, and that he might never forgive her. But she also understood that to protect herself, she had to face any backlash with strength. She felt no regret, even though the pain still lingered. But she knew what she had done was right. She could no longer live in the shadow of being used. Love and kindness could not be given to those who only sought to take. And she was too tired to walk that path any longer. Her life might change from here on out. And no matter how hard it would be, she was ready to begin a new chapter, one no longer bound by the past. The days following the confrontation with Timmy passed in quiet reflection for Mrs. Linda. While she couldn't deny that the decisions she had made were difficult, they also marked the beginning of her journey to rediscover herself. As the old walls around her slowly crumbled, Mrs. Linda began to feel a sense of freedom, a space where she no longer had to worry about being taken advantage of. Her life had changed completely. One morning, while tidying up her quiet home, she saw a notice for a community group for seniors posted on the bulletin board at the neighborhood cultural center. As she read it, she felt an urge, something she had never experienced before. She realized she needed to do something to keep from feeling alone in the years ahead. She decided to join the group. On her first day walking into the meeting room, Mrs. Linda felt a bit hesitant. She didn't know where to begin, but the warm welcome from the group made her feel like she had just stepped into a new family. They didn't see her as an old woman past her prime, but as a companion, a part of a community eager to connect and share. The group's activities were varied. Each week, they held meetings where they shared stories about life, family, and the challenges they had overcome. Her new friends didn't care about wealth or status. They simply sought empathy and genuine kindness. Through these conversations, Mrs. Linda gradually realized that love didn't always require material giving. Sometimes it was simply about sharing and understanding. One day, during the group's annual gathering, Mrs. Linda stood and looked around, suddenly struck by something special. These friends around her weren't her blood relatives, yet they had become an essential part of her life. They weren't bound by blood, but by respect, kindness, and humanity. As she sat beside George, an elderly man from the group, he looked at her with warmth in his eyes and said, "Mrs. Linda, if you ever need anything, we'll always be here." Those words filled her with a warmth she hadn't felt in a long time. No one outside her family had ever comforted her like that, and now everything had changed. The love and support in this new community weren't rooted in manipulation, like what she had experienced with Timmy, but in sincerity. People helping one another simply because they wanted to, not for personal gain. Mrs. Linda felt deeply grateful. These new friends had arrived at exactly the right time. They helped her realize that life didn't always depend on the presence of close relatives. Sometimes it could become even more meaningful when you find people who are willing to share life's joys and sorrows with you. She began participating in volunteer activities with the group. They helped the less fortunate, engaged in charity projects, and even organized celebrations for the elderly in their community. Mrs. Linda became an integral part of these efforts, and each time she saw the smiles and gratitude of those they helped, her heart grew warmer. During conversations, Mrs. Linda shared her life story. Her new friends didn't just listen. They shared their own stories of pain, loss, and joy. It made her feel less alone. Every time she spoke of the hardships she had endured, she realized just how far she had come. People no longer saw her as just an old woman. They saw her as someone with value, someone capable of inspiring others. One day, in a heartfelt group discussion, Mrs. Linda said, "We may lose many things in life, but friendship, genuine love, and mutual support are what carry us through the hardest times." And she truly meant it, not just as an idea, but as part of her personal journey. Loneliness was not the end. It was the beginning of a new path. She realized that when we open our hearts and give, what we receive in return can be truly meaningful. Mrs. Linda smiled softly, feeling a peace she hadn't felt in years. She was no longer bound by false relationships. She no longer worried about who might use or abandon her once she had nothing left to offer. Her friends in the group wanted nothing from her but friendship and shared moments. She had found a new family, not one of blood, but one of love and mutual respect. Mrs. Linda realized that her life wasn't just a string of painful events. It was a story of transformation and healing. She had overcome life's trials, and now she was embracing each new moment. No longer a lonely woman in an empty house, she had become strong, independent, and full of hope. And though there were still moments of sadness, she knew she had found her path. Mrs. Linda had returned to herself, not by chasing material things or others' approval, but by rebuilding her self-respect, reclaiming her independence, and finding true companions. Each day she saw light in sincere relationships, in sharing, and in unconditional love. Mrs. Linda's 73rd birthday had arrived, a milestone she had long awaited. Although none of her close family members were around anymore, she didn't feel lonely. Instead, she felt a peace she had never known before. This birthday celebration was unlike any she had ever had. It wasn't about expensive gifts or the presence of relatives, but a moment to celebrate friendship, empathy, and the genuine love she had found in her new community. The small room where the party was held was filled with laughter and cheerful conversation. Her friends from the community group came from all walks of life, each carrying their own stories and pain, but also hope and resilience. They gathered together, chatting about life's simple pleasures, family, work, beautiful memories, and the challenges they had overcome. Mrs. Linda felt like she truly belonged. As she cut the cake, her eyes no longer held worry or fear of what might come. She felt more at peace than ever. The birthday wishes from her community friends reminded her that she was not alone. They didn't expect anything material from her, only her presence, her willingness to share these moments together. Looking around the room, her eyes filled with emotion. Everything I need is right here, she thought. Not money or possessions, but love, understanding, and kindness. She smiled, feeling whole in that moment. Then, suddenly, Timmy appeared. Mrs. Linda hadn't expected her grandson to come. He stood in the doorway with a look that was more sulky than angry, so different from the last time she had seen him. She looked into Timmy's eyes, and a quiet stillness settled over the room. He walked in slowly, looked at her, then bowed his head. "Grandma, I came to wish you a happy birthday," Timmy said hesitantly. "I know you don't want to see me, but I wanted to say I'm sorry. I misunderstood everything." Mrs. Linda didn't respond right away. She simply stood there, silent, looking into his eyes, sensing something had changed in him. She no longer saw anger or manipulation, only sincere regret. Finally, she spoke, gently but firmly. "I've already forgiven you. You are a part of my life story, but I can't keep giving all that I have without receiving true love in return. If you need me, I'll be here, but I have no choice now but to love myself first." Timmy stood still, as if her words had struck him deeply. After a pause, he stepped closer, bowed his head again, and said softly, "I'm sorry, Grandma. I understand now." Mrs. Linda said nothing more. She simply felt a lightness in her heart. Timmy was no longer the child she once spoiled endlessly, but she could see he was now searching for a better path, a more honest way of living. And she, with her open heart, knew she had reclaimed the strength to live independently, to love without being taken advantage of. Mrs. Linda felt a quiet happiness. The two of them stood there in silence, but the air between them was no longer heavy. She knew that in this moment, both she and Timmy had changed. He was no longer the selfish boy she had once known, and she was no longer the woman so easily used. They had begun a new relationship, one built on understanding and forgiveness, not material exchange. Mrs. Linda realized that forgiveness wasn't weakness, it was strength to move forward. Both she and Timmy had learned that life doesn't always turn out the way we hope. Sometimes we must lose something precious to discover what truly matters. Mrs. Linda knew there was no need to cling to what had passed. Instead, she would live in the present, surrounded by people who truly cared. From that moment on, Mrs. Linda felt lighter than she had in years. Forgiveness wasn't just something she gave to Timmy, it was a gift she gave herself. She no longer had to live with the pain of the past. She could open her heart to the goodness of the future. The birthday party ended with joy, but for Mrs. Linda, it was only one chapter in a longer journey. Loneliness was no longer something she feared. She had found a new kind of family, not one born of blood, but of sincere relationships, love, and shared understanding. And whatever life might bring, Mrs. Linda knew she already had everything she needed: love, forgiveness, and peace in her heart. One early morning, as Mrs. Linda stood by the window, gazing out at the soft light of dawn, she no longer felt alone. By now, she had learned that family isn't just about blood. It's about those who truly love and respect you, no matter who they are. The people she had found in her new community, who asked for nothing but genuine friendship, were exactly the family she needed at this point in her life. There was a time when Mrs. Linda believed her life would end in solitude, that old age would be a long stretch of quiet days with no one to share her joys or sorrows. But in the end, she realized that growing old wasn't the end. It was a chance to live more authentically, to step out from the shadow of the past, and to build new, meaningful, and lasting connections. Family isn't just about blood, Mrs. Linda told herself. Sometimes family is made of those who walk with you through life's ups and downs, loving and truly respecting you. She had been through the pain of betrayal and being taken advantage of. But those experiences taught her the real value of love. Love isn't about what others can take from you. It's about what you can give freely without expecting anything in return. And through her journey, Mrs. Linda had learned to love herself, to forgive past mistakes, and to open her heart to new relationships. That's why Mrs. Linda wanted to share this message with others. Never be afraid to open your heart. Don't hesitate to create a new family, no matter your age. We don't have to live in the shadow of those who have hurt or used us. Instead, we can seek out those willing to share life with us, those who will stand by us in difficult times, and those who love us for who we truly are. Sometimes, new opportunities only appear when we are brave enough to open the door to our hearts. And old age, often seen as the end, is actually the beginning of a new journey. A journey filled with hope, love, and sincere relationships. Mrs. Linda had learned that even if we lose the ones we once held dear, life still offers us endless chances to begin again. People can change, and a big part of that change comes through forgiveness. Only when you forgive those who hurt you can you truly be free and step into a brighter future. In the end, Mrs. Linda understood, we don't need to have everything to be happy, but we do need people who truly care about us. The new friends she had found in her community were proof of that. They didn't expect anything from her, except for her empathy, and she knew she had found her truest companions, even if they weren't related by blood. So to anyone who feels alone or abandoned in old age, Mrs. Linda wanted to say, don't let fear keep you from opening your heart. Don't be afraid to let go of those who never truly cared. That loss is only a step toward welcoming new love and new relationships. Old age isn't something to fear. It's simply a new chapter of life where you can find peace, joy, and a new kind of family, even without shared blood. With a heart full of warmth, Mrs. Linda knew she had found what truly matters in life, genuine love and forgiveness. And that's the message she wanted to share with everyone. No matter what difficulties or challenges we face, once we open our hearts and find those who truly care for us, we'll never feel alone again. Because in this life, love is the most precious gift we can give and receive.